Professor Zixlathep moved his four tentacles nervously as he looked at the class roster again. The name Nathan Howard stood out among the others, not because it was unusual, but because of what it represented. For the first time in the Galactic Academy's 300-year history, a human would attend classes. "Are you certain this is wise, Director?" Zixlathep asked, his skin shifting to a worried purple hue. Director Quelvor's crystalline form sparkled under the light of the three moons visible through the office window. "The Galactic Council has accepted Earth into the Federation as a probationary member. Educational exchange is mandatory under the integration protocols." "But they're from a death world," Zixlathep protested. "Their biology, their psychology, they evolved under constant threat. Their entire history is warfare." "Which is precisely why we need to understand them," the director replied. "Better to have them as allies than opponents, wouldn't you agree? Besides, how dangerous can one human student be?" Zixlathep wasn't convinced, but he knew better than to argue further. As the Academy's leading professor of advanced tactical theory, he would have to make this work somehow. The first day of class arrived too quickly. Zixlathep entered the circular lecture hall where 30 students from 23 species sat, in tiered seating. He spotted the human immediately, smaller than the Taurians but larger than the Vespi, with only 2 arms and 2 legs, and strange fur on top of his head. The human wore the standard Academy uniform, modified for his unusual body shape. "Welcome to Advanced Tactical Theory," Zixlathep began, his translator converting his harmonic tones into standard galactic speech. "I am Professor Zixlathep. This term we will study the fundamental principles of strategic engagement as developed over 12,000 years of peaceful galactic expansion." His eyes moved across the class, noting the various species. The 4 Taurians with their massive bodies and 4-lobed brains sat together, as did the hive-minded Vespi students who shared thoughts through subtle pheromones. 3 Medusans floated near the ceiling, their telepathic abilities allowing them to absorb concepts directly from the professor's mind. The crystalline Saxum students sat perfectly still, their silicon-based neural networks processing information at quantum speeds. And then there was the human, Nathan Howard, sitting alone, taking notes with a primitive marking tool on processed plant material. "Before we begin," Zixlathep continued, "let us welcome our newest species to the Academy. Nathan Howard represents Earth, our newest Federation member. Their world is classified as a Class 12 death world, so please be mindful of their fragility and limited sensory capabilities." All eyes turned to Nathan, who nodded politely but said nothing. The Medusan students projected telepathic whispers that filled the room with an uncomfortable buzz. "Enough," Zixlathep said firmly. "We begin with the 3 principles of Keldorian defense theory." Over the next several weeks, Zixlathep watched Nathan closely. The human struggled with basic concepts that most Academy students understood instinctively. The mathematical models that described optimal defensive formations seemed particularly difficult for him. While the Saxum students could visualize 6-dimensional tactical arrays instantly, Nathan had to laboriously work through each step with his marking tool. During practical exercises, the human performed poorly. His solution to a standard orbital defense problem showed fundamental misunderstandings of energy distribution theory. The Taurian students didn't bother hiding their 4-toned laughter when Nathan presented his work. "See me after class, Mr. Howard," Zixlathep said when the human simulation failed for the 3rd time. Later in his office, Zixlathep tried to be diplomatic. "Perhaps there are translation issues, or maybe the Academy environment is too stressful for your physiology." Nathan shook his head. "The problem isn't the environment, Professor. It's the approach. Your tactical theories all assume perfect information and rational actors." "Of course," Zixlathep replied, confused. "All advanced civilizations operate on optimal solution sets. Humans don't," Nathan said simply. "We evolved expecting deception, preparing for worst-case scenarios and assuming enemies will act unpredictably. Because that's what we do." Zixlathep's skin turned a thoughtful blue. "Interesting, but inefficient." Efficiency isn't always effective, Nathan replied. The professor decided to change his approach. The first major assignment will be posted tomorrow. Perhaps a more practical application will better suit your evolutionary background. The assignment was straightforward. Design a defensive strategy for protecting a resource-rich moon against a technologically superior aggressor. The constraints included minimal casualties and infrastructure damage. Most students would apply the unified defense doctrine they'd been studying. Zix expected Nathan to struggle again. Instead, the human submitted his assignment 2 days early. Curious, the professor reviewed it immediately and was shocked by what he found. The strategy wasn't elegant or mathematically optimal. It looked almost primitive at first glance, until Zix ran it through the advanced simulation system. Nathan's approach used the moon's geography in unexpected ways, creating kill zones and false retreat patterns. It incorporated deliberate weaknesses that would tempt attackers into traps. Most surprisingly, it accounted for psychological factors, like overconfidence and frustration. Every simulated attack failed against it. The casualties were minimal, and critical infrastructure remained intact. Zix spent hours analyzing the human's work. It violated dozens of established tactical principles yet produced superior results. It wasn't just different. It was unsettling. The approach revealed a mind evolved to fight, to survive against overwhelming odds. The next day, Zix displayed the simulation results to the class without revealing whose work it was. This defensive strategy defeated every attack variant in our database, he explained, as the holographic display showed another failed assault. The casualty rate is 82% lower than the Keldorian optimal solution. The class watched in silence. The Taurian students' 4 eyes blinked in synchronized confusion. The Vespi collective buzzed with agitation. "Whose solution is this?" asked Gilix, the top Saxum student. "Mr. Howard's," Zix replied. A ripple of disbelief spread through the room. The Medusans projected such strong telepathic shock that several smaller species winced in pain. "That's impossible," Gilix said. "His mathematical skills are clearly inferior." Nathan spoke for the first time in weeks. "We don't fight with math on Earth. We fight with everything we have." "Please explain your approach, Mr. Howard," Zix encouraged. Nathan stood and walked to the holographic display. "Your doctrines. All assume enemies will choose the most efficient attack pattern. Humans never make that assumption. We expect enemies to be clever, desperate, and willing to sacrifice. My solution creates multiple defensive layers that adapt to the attacker's psychology, not just their capabilities." "Psychology is not a factor in advanced warfare," argued a Taurian student. "Optimal solutions are universally applicable." "Tell that to anyone who's ever fought a war," Nathan replied quietly. "In real combat, the enemy gets a vote." The phrase confused everyone, requiring the translation system to provide cultural context about Earth's military history. As understanding dawned, the room grew uncomfortably quiet. Zix skin shifted to a deep golden color of academic excitement. "It seems we have much to learn from each other. Mr. Howard's approach suggests tactical theory has evolutionary components we haven't fully explored." As the students filed out after class, Zix noticed how they gave Nathan extra space, as if suddenly aware of something dangerous in their midst. The human either didn't notice or pretended not to care. "Mr. Howard," Zix called. "A moment, please." When they were alone, the professor asked the question that had been bothering him since reviewing the assignment. "Your species has only had spaceflight for less than 2 centuries. How did you develop such effective tactical thinking?" Nathan's expression turned grim. "We've had thousands of years of practice fighting each other, Professor. When every conflict might be your last, you get very good at staying alive." Zix felt his skin cool to a worried gray. Maybe Director Quelvor had been wrong. Maybe one human student could be dangerous after all. Not physically, but because of the ideas he brought with him. Ideas that worked too well. News of Nathan's unusual tactical solution spread quickly through the academy. Students from other departments began sitting in on Professor Zix lectures curious to see the human who had challenged centuries of established doctrine. Some came to mock, others came to learn, but all watched Nathan with new interest. Professor Zixlathep decided to test the limits of Nathan's abilities. The next assignment would be much more complex. Your task, he announced to the class, is to develop both offensive and defensive strategies for this scenario. The holographic display showed a detailed orbital station with multiple sections: civilian quarters, manufacturing zones, command centers, and defense systems. The station orbited a resource-rich moon, with limited shuttles for evacuation. We'll design a defense plan for the station against an attack with superior forces. You will also design an attack plan that would defeat your own defense. Both must minimize civilian casualties and preserve critical infrastructure. The class buzzed with excitement. This was graduate-level work, rarely assigned to first-year students. You may work in pairs or alone, Zixlathep added, glancing at Nathan. Your solutions are due in 1 week. The Taurian students immediately formed their usual teams, their four-lobed brains working in perfect harmony. The Vespi students didn't need to pair up, as their hive mind already functioned as a collective. The Saxum crystals merged their silicon networks to increase processing power. No one approached Nathan. You may join a team if you wish, Mr. Howard, Professor Zixlathep offered. I'll work alone, Nathan replied quietly, gathering his primitive paper notes. For the next week, Nathan was rarely seen outside his small quarters. His roommate, a gaseous entity named Fwoosh who breathed methane, reported that the human spent hours writing and drawing by hand instead of using the Academy's advanced simulation systems. He reads strange books, Fwoosh told the others during mealtime. Stories about human wars. One was called The Art of War by someone named Sun Tzu, another about something called guerrilla warfare. Very old texts, not modern tactical manuals at all. The day before the assignment was due, Rixil, the top Taurian student, confronted Nathan in the common area. Our team accessed your previous solution, Rixil stated, all 4 eyes fixed on Nathan. We identified 17 logical flaws and 39 inefficiencies. Nathan looked up from his meal. And yet it worked better than yours. The Taurian's leathery skin flushed dark with anger. Tomorrow you will see true tactical mastery. Your primitive thinking cannot compete with optimal solutions developed by superior minds. Nathan simply shrugged. We'll see. Presentation day arrived. Professor Zixlathep had invited several faculty members to observe, including Director Quelvor. The crystalline administrator sat at the back of the room, her form glittering with interest. Rixil's team presented first. Their defense plan employed state-of-the-art shield harmonics and energy distribution. Their attack plan used precise, overwhelming force against key nodes. Both strategies were mathematically elegant, with resource allocation calculated to 6 decimal places. Next came the Vespi Collective, whose solution incorporated swarm theory and rapid response systems. The Medusans presented a telepathically enhanced command structure that could react in milliseconds. Each presentation was more impressive than the last, showing mastery of advanced theories and perfect mathematical precision. Finally, it was Nathan's turn. My approach is different, he began, his voice steady despite the scrutiny. Both my defense and attack plans focus on psychological factors as much as physical ones. His defense strategy seemed odd at first glance. Instead of distributing shields evenly, he left certain sections apparently vulnerable. He placed critical systems in unexpected locations and created redundancies that seemed wasteful. His evacuation plan prioritized moving civilians to interior sections rather than escape shuttles. This makes no sense, interrupted Rixil. You've created deliberate weaknesses. Any rational attacker would exploit them immediately. Exactly, Nathan replied. But they're not weaknesses. They're traps. He explained how the apparently vulnerable sections contained sensor arrays that would gather critical intelligence about the attacker's capabilities. The exposed areas would draw fire away from truly important systems hidden elsewhere. The civilian evacuation plan included using non-combatants to spread misinformation that would be intercepted by attackers. You would use civilians as part of your tactical plan? gasped a Medusan professor, her telepathic shock rippling through the room. I would use everything available, Nathan answered calmly. In a real fight for survival, everything is a resource, including information, fear, and confusion. Then he revealed his attack plan. Unlike the others, which focused on direct approaches with overwhelming force, Nathan's strategy began with small probing attacks to test responses. It included fake retreats, communications jamming, and targeting systems that appeared important but weren't. Most importantly, he continued, my attack plan assumes the defenders will adapt. It includes multiple contingencies based on potential defender responses. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy, so flexibility is more important than mathematical precision. The room fell silent. Professor Zixlathep moved to the central console and uploaded Nathan's strategies into the simulation system. Let us test these approaches, he said. First, they ran Nathan's defense against the best attack strategies presented by the other students. Despite the apparent flaws Rixil had pointed out, Nathan's defense held firm. The traps worked exactly as he had predicted, drawing attackers into kill zones or wasting their resources on decoys. Then they tested Nathan's attack plan against the best defensive strategies. Within minutes, his multi-phased approach had bypassed the mathematically perfect defenses, causing simulated defenders to react predictably to unpredictable threats. Director Quelvor spoke for the first time. Run his attack against his own defense. The simulation began. This time, the outcome wasn't clear. Nathan's attack adapted to the defense's tricks, while the defense revealed new layers of protection. The battle stretched on, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. Finally, the simulation timer ran out. Stalemate, Professor Zixlathep announced, his skin shifting through colors of surprise and academic excitement. Impossible, whispered Rixil. There is always an optimal solution. Not when both sides can think creatively, Nathan replied. That's why we humans never stopped fighting each other. Each new tactic creates a new counter-tactic, which creates its own counter. It never ends. Director Quelvor's crystalline form sparkled intensely. Professor Zixlathep, I believe we have made an error in our understanding of human evolution. Their death world didn't just make them physically resilient. It created minds that understand conflict in ways we have forgotten. Professor Zixlathep nodded slowly. Mr. Howard, where did you learn these strategies? Which military academy on Earth taught you? Nathan looked surprised by the question. I wasn't in the military. I played chess competitively and studied history as a hobby. These are just basic concepts any human would understand. The silence that followed was profound. If this was basic human thinking, what would an actual Earth military strategist be capable of? As the students filed out, Professor Zixlathep noticed something had changed. The other students no longer avoided Nathan out of disdain. Now they kept their distance out of a new emotion that many of them had never experienced before: fear. The day after the tactical presentations, Nathan entered the Academy's main dining hall and noticed something different. The normal buzz of conversation died as he walked in. Students from all departments watched him with new eyes. Some moved away as he approached the food dispensers. Others whispered to each other behind translucent tentacles or telepathic shields. Nathan collected his meal, a protein substitute designed to match Earth food, and looked for an empty table. As he walked, he heard snippets of conversation from the translator built into his uniform. Dangerous thinking. Military potential. Evolved for warfare. He sat alone, as usual, but not for long. Is this seat taken? Asked a friendly voice. Nathan looked up to see another human. She wore the blue uniform of the Xenolinguistics department. Her name badge read, Amy Parker. Help yourself, Nathan replied, surprised and relieved to see another human face. Amy sat down with her tray. You've caused quite a stir. The whole academy is talking about the Deathworlder who broke the tactical simulators. I didn't break anything, Nathan said. I just approached the problem differently. That's not how they see it, Amy said, nodding toward a group of faculty members who were watching them intently. The Dean of Military Sciences asked me about you this morning. What did he want to know? If all humans think like you do, Amy replied, taking a bite of her meal. If Earth is developing some special military program, Nathan laughed. What did you tell him? I said, you're pretty normal for a human. We've been trying to outsmart each other for thousands of years. She grinned. I think that scared him more than if I'd said you were special. Their conversation was interrupted by Professor Zixlathep, who approached with another alien Nathan didn't recognize. This one had the luminescent skin of the Eldari, an ancient species known for their extensive historical archives. Mr. Howard, Ms. Parker, Zixlathep said politely. May we join you? Nathan nodded, and the two aliens sat down. Their bodies adjusted to the human-designed chairs with some difficulty. This is Professor Nilvex from Historical Studies, Zixlathep explained. She has a research interest in Earth history. The Eldari's skin pulsed with soft blue light as she spoke. I have been studying your species since Earth joined the Federation. Your tactical solutions have raised interesting questions about human evolution. Nathan looked at Amy, who shrugged slightly. What kind of questions? He asked. Most spacefaring species evolved beyond internal conflict before developing interstellar travel, Nilvex explained. The energy required for war is better spent on exploration and advancement, yet humans continued fighting each other even after developing nuclear weapons. Why? The directness of the question caught Nathan off guard. I'm not a historian, he said carefully, but I guess we never trusted each other enough to stop. Fascinating, the Eldari professor said, her skin shifting to a deeper blue. And did this constant state of potential conflict shape your tactical thinking? Of course, Nathan replied. Every military advance created a counter. Tanks led to anti-tank weapons. Stealth technology led to new detection systems. The side that adapts faster usually wins. Professor Zixlathep's skin turned a thoughtful green. This explains why your solutions worked so well. You assumed adaptation rather than optimization. That's just common sense, Nathan said. Not to species that evolved toward cooperation rather than competition, Nilvex responded. Your perspective is unique in the Federation. And potentially valuable, Zixlathep added. I have a proposal, Mr. Howard. Would you be willing to share more of Earth's tactical history with the class? A series of case studies, perhaps? Nathan hesitated. Amy leaned forward. You should know, she said quietly. There's a debate happening among the Academy leadership. Some think humans might be too unpredictable to join the Federation fully. This could help change minds. Nathan thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll do it. The next class session was packed. Word had spread, and students from all departments crowded in to hear the humans' presentation. Professor Zixlathep had arranged for a special holographic system capable of recreating historical battles from Earth. Today, Zixlathep announced, Mr. Howard will present examples from Earth's military history to help us understand human tactical evolution. Nathan stepped forward. The lights dimmed, and the holographic display activated. He began with ancient battles, Roman legions against Carthaginian forces, showing how Hannibal used terrain and psychology to defeat a superior force. Then he moved to guerrilla warfare, how smaller forces could defeat larger, better equipped armies through surprise, mobility, and the home field advantage. He showed how the Vietnamese had defeated both the French and American forces despite technological disadvantages. The students watched in silence as Nathan explained asymmetric warfare, counterinsurgency tactics, and hybrid warfare. He showed how cyber attacks could disrupt physical infrastructure, and how information warfare could destabilize societies without firing a shot. These are all tactics humans have used against each other, Nathan concluded. Every advance meets a counter-advance. Every defense creates a new offensive approach. The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, a Medusan student's telepathic question filled the air. Your species continued this pattern of warfare even after developing nuclear weapons capable of destroying your planet. Yes, Nathan answered simply. We call it deterrence now. The threat of total destruction forces a certain kind of balance. Horror rippled through the room. For species that had evolved toward collective survival, the concept was almost incomprehensible. But why would any rational species risk extinction? Asked a Saxum student, the crystalline structure flickering with confusion. Because we knew our enemies might be willing to take the same risk, Nathan replied. If your opponent might launch a first strike, you need to be prepared to strike back, or to strike first yourself. The implications hung in the air. If humans thought this way about each other, how would they think about alien species? Director Quelvor, who had been watching from the back of the room, stepped forward. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Howard. I believe we all have much to consider. As the students filed out, Nathan noticed they gave him even more space than before. Even Professor Zixlathep seemed troubled, his skin a mottled pattern of concern, only Amy waited for him by the door. You didn't sugarcoat it, she said. Would you have? Nathan asked. She shook her head. No. They need to understand us if this is going to work. She looked around at the retreating aliens. But understanding might not lead to acceptance. What do you mean? There's talk about restricting human involvement in the Federation, Amy said quietly. Some species are pushing for limits on how many humans can serve on starships or in security roles. Nathan frowned. Because they're afraid of how we think? Because they're afraid of what we've been, Amy corrected. A species that evolved through conflict instead of cooperation. Nathan watched the last of the alien students disappear around a corner, their postures radiating discomfort. What happens now? He asked. Professor Zixlathep, who had been listening quietly, answered, That depends on whether the Federation decides that human tactical thinking is an asset or a threat. The week following Nathan's presentation on human warfare was tense. Students whispered in corners when he walked by. Some professors changed their lectures to include discussions about evolutionary divergence in problem-solving approaches. The academy seemed divided between those who found human tactical thinking fascinating and those who found it deeply disturbing. Nathan began spending more time with Amy. As the only other human at the academy, she understood his growing isolation. Don't take it personally, she told him as they walked through the academy's botanical garden. The artificial gravity was adjusted to mimic Earth conditions in this section, a small comfort for the human students. They're not used to species that evolved through conflict. Did you know the Vespi haven't had a war in 8,000 years? Nathan asked. Their professor told me they evolved past it, like it's some kind of disease they cured. Amy nodded. The Eldari are the same. Professor Nilvek said their historical archives don't even have a word for conquest. They expanded to new planets only when they reached population limits. They sat on a bench near a patch of earth flowers, roses and tulips brought as cultural specimens. The familiar scents were comforting. Maybe they're right, Nathan said quietly. Maybe there's something wrong with us. Before Amy could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Nathan's communication device. It was a message from Professor Zixlathep. Please come to conference room 3 immediately. Final exam details to be discussed. Nathan found Professor Zixlathep waiting with Director Quelvor and Admiral Voxthar, the imposing head of Federation Strategic Command. The Admiral's species was unfamiliar to Nathan, a tall, skeletal form with multiple jointed limbs and iridescent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Mr. Howard, the Admiral said, his translator converting the clicking sounds into standard speech. Your tactical presentations have caught our attention. Nathan stood straighter. Sir. Director Quelvor's crystalline form shimmered. The Admiral has proposed a special final examination for your class, one designed to test the integration of different tactical approaches. Professor Zixlathep's skin had turned a nervous yellow. The test will be a full-scale strategic simulation. Teams will compete to secure objectives in a complex star system. The stakes are high, Admiral Voxthar added, his multiple limbs moving in complex patterns. The Federation faces challenges from beyond our borders, non-aligned species with less peaceful intentions. We need to understand all available tactical options. Nathan understood the subtext immediately. This wasn't just a test for him, it was a test for humanity's place in the Federation. Teams will be assigned tomorrow, Professor Zix-Lathep said. Preparation will begin immediately after. The next day, the class assignments were posted. Nathan's heart sank as he saw his teammates, Rixel the Taurian, Sisk the Vespi representative, and Glem, a gelatinous collective intelligence known for perfect logical processing. All three had been openly critical of human tactical thinking. This is clearly an attempt to neutralize your disruptive approach, Sisk communicated, the translator picking up the subtle pheromone signals the Vespi used. I believe the term is sandbagging, Glem added, its gelatinous form rippling with calculated amusement. Rixil simply stared with all four eyes, making no attempt to hide his displeasure. Or maybe it's a chance for us to learn from each other, Nathan suggested, trying to sound optimistic. Their first strategy session quickly descended into argument. The alien students wanted to apply pure doctrinal approaches, perfect shield distributions, optimal resource allocation, and standard attack formations. These are proven effective over centuries of simulation, Rixil insisted, his four-lobed brain calculating probabilities faster than Nathan could speak. Against opponents who follow the same doctrines, Nathan countered. But what if they don't? What if they're unpredictable, like humans? Unpredictability is inefficient, Glem stated, its gelatinous form rippling with certainty. No rational species would choose less than optimal approaches. You keep saying that, Nathan sighed, but the simulation results say otherwise. Hours passed with little progress. Finally, as tempers rose, Professor Zix-Lathep intervened. Perhaps a compromise, the professor suggested, his skin a diplomatic blue. Why not divide the responsibilities? Let each approach handle what it does best? This led to a breakthrough. The aliens would handle resource optimization and defensive, positioning areas where mathematical precision was truly valuable. Nathan would develop contingency plans and offensive operations, areas where adaptability and unpredictability mattered most. For the next week, they worked together uneasily. Nathan was surprised to find that underneath their initial hostility, his teammates were actually curious about human thinking. Why would you sacrifice efficiency for unpredictability? Sisk asked during a late-night strategy session. Because perfect efficiency becomes predictable, Nathan explained. If I know exactly what you'll do because it's the optimal choice, I can prepare a counter that makes your optimal choice suddenly very suboptimal. Slowly, grudgingly, the team began to incorporate elements of both approaches. Their hybrid strategy took shape, mathematically sound but with built-in adaptability. They created contingency plans for contingency plans. They designed traps within traps. They built a system where each component complemented the others. The day of the final exam arrived. The simulation chamber was massive, designed to fully immerse participants in a virtual star system. Admiral Voxthar and a panel of senior Federation officials would observe from a separate room. Before entering, Director Quelvor pulled Nathan aside. This is more than a test for you, she said quietly, her crystalline form vibrating with intensity. The Admiral is evaluating whether human tactical thinking represents an opportunity or a threat to Federation security. Nathan nodded. I understand. No, she replied. I don't think you do. Based on today's results, the Federation Council will vote on whether to accelerate human integration or impose restrictions on human involvement in sensitive areas. The implications hit Nathan like a physical blow. His performance today wouldn't just affect his grades, it could shape humanity's future in the galaxy. No pressure, he muttered to himself as he joined his team. The simulation began. Their opponents were the top-ranked teams from the class, each pursuing different objectives across a complex star system. 3 habitable planets, numerous moons, asteroid fields, and strategic jump points created a battlefield of unprecedented complexity. Nathan's team started cautiously, establishing defensive positions while gathering intelligence. The aliens handled the mathematics perfectly, optimizing their resource distribution exactly as doctrine dictated. But when the first attacks came, it was Nathan's contingency plans that saved them. Alpha formation isn't working, Rixil reported as their defensive line buckled under attack. Switch to contingency Delta, Nathan responded. Let them think they've broken through, then spring the trap. The maneuver worked perfectly. The attacking team, expecting standard doctrinal responses, found themselves caught in a carefully designed kill zone. As the simulation progressed, their hybrid approach proved increasingly effective. The aliens provided the perfect foundation of mathematical precision, while Nathan added the unpredictable elements that kept their opponents off balance. They're adapting to our patterns, Glenn warned during the third hour. Then let's change the patterns, Nathan suggested. Contingency Omega. That violates optimal resource distribution, Sisk protested. Exactly why they won't expect it, Nathan replied. By the final hour, their team held a commanding position. They had secured primary objectives, protected their resources, and established defensive positions that no opponent had been able to breach. As the simulation ended, Admiral Voxthar's voice filled the chamber. Well done, he said. Most impressive adaptation of standard doctrine I have seen in 3 centuries. Nathan's teammates looked at each other in surprise. For the first time, Rixil's 4 eyes blinked in something that might have been respect. I do not understand, the Taurian admitted. Our approach defied optimization algorithms but produced superior results. Welcome to human thinking, Nathan said with a smile. Sometimes the best strategy is to be just unpredictable enough that even you aren't entirely sure what you'll do next. The day after the final exam, Nathan was summoned to the Grand Hall of the Academy. This central chamber, with its soaring ceiling designed to accommodate all Federation species, was usually reserved for graduation ceremonies and official visits. Nathan had never been inside before. He entered nervously, finding the vast space filled with Academy faculty, students, and several high-ranking Federation officials. Admiral Voxthar stood on the central platform with Director Quelvor and Professor Zixlathep. They motioned for Nathan to join them. As he walked forward, Nathan spotted Amy in the crowd. She gave him an encouraging smile. Next to her stood his teammates from the simulation, Rixil, Sisk, and Glem, looking unusually united despite their different biologies. Nathan Howard of Earth, Admiral Voxthar began, his multiple limbs moving in formal patterns that the translator didn't convert to speech. Your performance in yesterday's tactical simulation has prompted this special gathering. Nathan stood straighter, uncertain whether this was an honor or a problem. For centuries, the Admiral continued, the Federation has approached tactical and strategic planning through mathematical optimization. Our doctrines prioritize efficiency, resource conservation, and predictable outcomes. This approach has served us well in peaceful expansion. The Admiral's iridescent eyes focused intently on Nathan. However, the galaxy is changing. Non-aligned species beyond our borders do not always follow predictable patterns. Recent encounters have exposed limitations in our approach. Director, Quelvor's crystalline form sparkled as she spoke next. The Academic Advisory Council has reviewed your work, Mr. Howard. Your approach to tactical problems, what you call thinking like the enemy, represents a perspective absent from our doctrine for thousands of years. Professor Zixlathep stepped forward, his skin a formal purple. The question before us was whether human tactical thinking represents a valuable addition to Federation knowledge or a concerning evolutionary divergence. Nathan felt a chill. This wasn't just about his grades, this was about humanity's place in the Federation. He glanced at Amy, who nodded slightly, encouraging him to stay calm. Admiral Voxthar raised one limb for silence. Based on yesterday's simulation results, the Federation's Strategic Command has reached a conclusion. We believe human tactical thinking represents a valuable complement to existing doctrine. A murmur ran through the crowd. Not everyone seemed pleased with this assessment. But, the Admiral added, this creates a new challenge. How do we integrate such different approaches How do species evolved for cooperation work effectively with a species evolved through competition? Nathan realized this was not a rhetorical question. They were waiting for his response. He took a deep breath. With respect, Admiral, I think yesterday's simulation already answered that question. My teammates and I succeeded because we combined approaches. We didn't try to force one perspective to dominate the other. Rixil stepped forward, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The human speaks truth. Our optimal calculations provided foundation. His unpredictable elements provided adaptation. Neither would have succeeded alone. Seg, the Vespi representative, released a pattern of pheromones that the translator converted. The hive agrees. Diversity of approach created resilience beyond doctrinal predictions. Glem's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been enthusiasm. Our analysis shows a 47.3% improvement over pure doctrinal approach. The inefficiencies were more than compensated by adaptability gains. Professor Zixlathep's skin shifted to a pleased blue. As I suspected, the greatest strength comes not from either approach alone, but from their combination. Admiral Voxthar made a series of clicking sounds that the translator didn't capture, apparently a sign of approval in his species. The Federation Council will be interested in these findings. We face growing challenges beyond our borders, species who do not share our evolutionary path toward cooperation. Perhaps human perspective will prove valuable in these encounters. Director. Quelvor turned to Nathan. Which brings us to the purpose of this gathering. The Academy wishes to establish a new department, Tactical Diversity Studies. Professor Zixlathep will lead it, exploring how different evolutionary paths create different strategic thinking. We would like you, Mr. Howard, to remain at the Academy as the first human teaching assistant. Nathan was stunned. Me? But I'm just a first-year student. You are the catalyst for a significant shift in Federation thinking, Professor Zixlathep replied. Your unique perspective has value here. Nathan looked at Amy, who gave him a thumbs up from the crowd. I would be honored, he said. Admiral Voxthar made a formal gesture. The Federation values all paths of evolutionary development, even those different from our own. Perhaps especially those. As we expand into the galaxy, we will encounter many species with different histories and approaches. Learning to integrate these differences will be crucial to our continued success. As the formal ceremony concluded, students and faculty approached Nathan. Some were merely curious, others seemed genuinely interested in learning more about human tactical thinking. The fear he had sensed earlier seemed to be fading, not gone completely, but replaced by cautious curiosity. Rixil approached with the other teammates. I was wrong about you, human, the Taurian admitted. Your approach is not primitive, it is not complementary. High praise from a 4-lobed brain, Nathan replied with a smile. The next class of human students arrives next month, Professor Zixlathep said, joining them. 20 of them spread across departments. You and Ms. Parker will help orient them to Academy life. Amy appeared at Nathan's side. They'll have an easier time than we did. You've already broken the ice, or should I say broken the simulation? Later, Nathan and Amy walked through the botanical garden talking about the future. The artificial earth sunlight felt warm on their faces. Do you think it will work? Nathan asked. Humans and the Federation? Amy considered the question. It won't be easy. We think differently. We evolved differently. But that's the point, isn't it? Different perspectives make us all stronger, as long as they don't expect us all to think like me, Nathan said. I'm not even a good example of human tactical thinking. Real military strategists would run circles around me. That's what scares them a little, Amy replied. But also what makes them respect us. We survived a death world by adapting constantly. That's a valuable trait in an unpredictable galaxy. As they walked, a group of first-year students from various species approached hesitantly. A young Medusan floated forward, its telepathic translator activating. Excuse me, Mr. Howard? We heard about your tactical approaches. Would you teach us some human strategy games? We want to understand how you think. Nathan smiled. It was a start. In the months that followed, the Academy established the new department, focusing on cognitive diversity and tactical approaches. When more human students arrived, they found a different reception than Nathan and Amy had experienced. Still some wariness, but also genuine curiosity and respect. The graduation ceremony that year featured a new tradition, the Tactical Diversity Honor, awarded to the team that best incorporated multiple cognitive approaches to problem solving. Nathan watched with pride as students from across the galaxy, humans included, stepped forward to receive recognition not for dominance, but for cooperation. Perhaps, Professor Zixlethep remarked to him afterward, we needed a species from a death world to teach us that true strength comes not from perfection, but from embracing differences and learning to adapt. Nathan smiled. On Earth, we call that evolution, Professor. And it's the one battle that never ends.